Hello and welcome to the Afl Riverina TV show. I'm your host, Simon Anderson. What a great way to start the 2014 season last week. Some interesting and surprising results. But before we get into all that, I'd like to introduce our guest today, a former Griffith player and coach and local musician, Grant Luhrs. Grant, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure, Simon.
Mate, tell us a little bit about your time at the Griffith Club there between 1969 and 1982. I guess, what do you remember sort of as a player and a coach?
Well, I remember a bit before that because it's my hometown and I grew up and learned all my football in Griffith before '69, but then started playing in the second grade, first grade from then on for quite a while. But I remember it being wonderful, actually. I enjoyed learning my football there and playing my football there. I went for a couple of years at university in 71, 72, then played 3 years in a row, 73, 74, 75, and then came back in 81 and 82, and that was it. And that was pretty close to the end of the road for me. But well, we had a lot of success, but no finals, no winning grand finals in that time. But I remember it being a wonderful time for football because heady halcyon days, I suppose. It was still very strong community orientated football in that area, as it is for all of those RFL teams and still today. But it was a great experience.
You talk a bit about your learning time during then. Would have been some different blokes that you learned from. Tell us a bit about your coaches.
Well, I remember growing up and watching some of the icons and great players of that era. Len Sexton, who won a couple of Garage medals, Vic Hathaway, Don Best, Kevin Kirkpatrick. Those are probably names that not many people would know, but those that were around would remember them. But I was just in awe of their abilities. Back in those days, you could bounce the ball and time it so that when you tackled and your ball was hitting the ground and you got tackled, you were tackled without holding the ball. So you got a free kick. And Len Sexton, I reckon, was the master of that, and I learned how to do that from him. Then they changed the bloody rules. I don't like that.
Now, tell us a little about your time as a coach. Coached in 1982. Was it a successful season?
Well, it was in terms of, it depends how you measure success, Simon. It was my one and only year of coaching. At that time, the RFL had just formed. That was the first year of the RFL, and they were talking about a relegation regime. We didn't have a very good side, or maybe I was a bad coach, I don't know, but we avoided relegation. That was our triumph that year, that we were fighting towards the end of the year. If they were going to introduce relegation, it wasn't certain that if that's what we avoided. So it was a triumph.
Tell us a little bit about, I guess, tough players and tough opponents, tough teams that you had to face during your time.
They were all tough. I remember the Hayes boys. Alan Hayes was, in particular, a very tough opponent. His brother, Kenny Hayes, was a lunatic. But they were all tough. They were tough sides. You know, you go out and play in the Ardlethan ground, in the middle of winter where everything dried out, and it was like playing on corrugated iron. And those boys come off the tractor, and I think they brought their tractors with them sometimes. And they were tough boys, tough grounds, and it's tough. Not like today, Simon.
The game
they wouldn't make it.
Now, what did you enjoy about playing footy for Griffith?
What did I enjoy? I enjoyed learning football, and I enjoyed playing for my hometown, as I always have, and that's what's going to be special about this weekend. That it's the 100-year celebration. There's nothing better, and that's why I went back, to in early '80s, was to try and have some success that has eluded the Griffith Club for so many years, usually at the hands of Ganmain, Grong Bantam, but we won't talk about that because it's still too soon, Simon.
Now, you mentioned that sort of, I guess a bit of a lack of success. A lot of footy critics locally say that with a town with such a large population, Griffith probably should have done a little bit better over the years. What's your response to that?
Yes, we're always known as the Collingwood of the Southwest. We usually had the good sides, and I remember in the 70s, when I played that slab in the 70s, that we ended up on top of the ladder and then lost 2 games, and that hurts. And like I say, it's still too soon to talk about. Why it happens, I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those elusive things. You know, you talk about tradition and history. Tradition in a football team. Some teams have a proud history of winning, and they won't accept anything else. And when you start to lose a few grand finals and games, vital games, obviously, you know, in finals and grand finals, I think that starts to build up a doubt in you. It's a very subtle psychological thing, but I think it can be quite profound. And we could probably go in there with a psychology team and work it all out, but we've won some. I mean, the year I was born, 1952, I remember it well. I was 3 months old at the time, but I remember the grand final win, and that was a wonderful one.
Now, do you get a chance to get out to many games these days? And, you know, of what you've seen, what do you think of how the game's going these days?
Well, I think it's declined, but saying that, I don't think it has, because it's just as strong in those places like Mangapla and Ganmain and Coolaman and Ardleth, and it's still the fabric of what holds the fabric of the town together, you know, and I think it's important. Obviously, it's declined because, you know, people are gravitating, young kids and young people are gravitating towards a different lifestyle, and the rural lifestyle is not always what they want. I don't see many games these days. My work in the music industry means that I'm sometimes away a lot, I think it's slipped a bit because of those things that I told you about.
Obviously a big weekend for the Griffith Club this weekend, naming their team of the century. Any players that you played alongside that you think might get a mention this weekend?
Well, look, I think that'd probably be the hardest. You know, selections, being part of a selection team and panel is always the hardest and most painful experience you can have if you're involved in football. It's so difficult. Who do you bring in? Who do you bring out? To have a team of the century, I think that'd be impossible. I think it'd be a masochist to put his hand up to try and choose it, because there's just so many good players thinking about it. You know, I just mentioned a few. There was the Vic Hathaways and the Len Sextons of the era that I remember from when I grew up, and then there was the people I played with, you know, the coaches and people I played with. I wouldn't like to pick that side. Anyone that gets anywhere near being considered for selection, I think it's an honour.
What would you say, you know, been the greatest achievement after many years of the career?
Well, staying alive, really, having, you know, getting a gig in the music industry. You know, it's like talking about the selection panels, if I can use that analogy. It's you're only as good as your last performance, and being able to sustain a career. I've recorded 13 albums over 30 years. I've got my own recording studio, which I use and run that as a business. So I've always been lucky in that my hobby's been my job, and I think that's probably the most important thing for me.
Now, I've been led to believe that you haven't missed the Tamworth Country Music Festival since 1985. What keeps you returning there?
Oh, drug, sex and rock and roll, Simon, yeah. Oh, look, it's just it's music, you know. We get up there with my friends and the fans that like country music, and it's just a wonderful time. You come away, it's a good kickstart for the year in terms of what you're going to do for the rest of the year. You meet people, you network, you bitch, you learn and have fun. It's just fantastic, and it's in January for those that don't know, and like I say, it's a wonderful way to start the year.
And tell us about musical influences along the years. What, I guess, other musicians, people around you that have influenced your music?
Oh, look, I'm quite eclectic in my tastes as far as music is concerned. It goes back to, you know, the Beatles and Pink Floyd and the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, and all of those kick-ass groups, and then go through to people like Steve Earle and the local. I have an undying respect for people like Slim Dusty and Tex Morton and John Williamson, those people that were the pioneers of country music in that regard. But my music, I guess I'm more of a singer-songwriter. I'm quite eclectic in that regard, so it's pretty hard to pigeonhole me. But all that, I guess it comes from all of those influences, those broad influences that I've had in music. And
this weekend, a big celebration. Surely you'll be busting out the guitar and belting out a tune on the weekend?
I don't know, I haven't been asked. Maybe they might say, well, look, Grant, you played a fair game of footy, but about the singing, just, you know, I know you want to sing a song, but don't. I don't know yet.
Excellent, mate. Well, enjoy the weekend celebrations, and
certainly will.
Thank you for joining us on the AFL Riverina TV show.
No worries.